You'll find.
Think you know what it takes to be a child star in Hollywood? Get ready to be shocked at some of these horrifying true tales. Here are 15 worst stories of child celebrities in old Hollywood history.
You don't have to push me. I know the way. I've been thrown out of here before. And so's my father.
You get out of here.
Number 15. Deanna Durban. Born Edna Mae Durban, Deanna Durban was a Canadian-born actress and singer. Her name certainly doesn't ring bells like some of her peers, but it would interest you to learn that she was one of Hollywood's brightest stars in the late 1930s and early 1940s. Durban was discovered by a casting director searching Los Angeles singing schools for someone to play opera star Ernestine Schumann Heink as a child. At 13, Durban was signed by a studio. One thing you would note is that for most of her career, she was famously cast as the lovable and wholesome kid sister or girl next door. To explain why Durban's name isn't as prominent today as some of her peers, there are a lot of things to consider. We could take it back to 1949 when she was released from her contract with Universal. At the time, she could very well have probably gone to MGM or another studio because she was still at the height of her acting abilities. Even her voice had a fan base of its own. So what happened? First off, Durban often clashed with studio executives over the direction of her career. As she grew older, she tried to take on more mature characters, such as a prostitute in the 1944 film Christmas Holiday. Critics, however, were not receptive to her transition to adult roles, leading to Durban's frustration with the part she was offered. Even when cameras stopped rolling, Durban couldn't shed her good girl image. Imagine trying to get out of a terrible first marriage, and all everyone was saying was that the good girl should never get divorced. In 1949, she moved to France, settling in the village Neauphaly-le-Château near Paris. Durban simply fled to Europe and completely turned her back on Hollywood. The question remains why? Why would a young girl at the height of her career make a drastic turn and opt for a simple life? Some people have occasionally raised questions as to why she did not receive a Lifetime Achievement Award or some other form of recognition for her work much later in the 60s or 70s. This thought has only given credence to the thought that something terribly wrong happened to her.
After you, Your Grace.
Oh, Sir Arthur, you are too kind.
I'd do any...
Number 14. Jack Wilde. From addiction to health problems, Jack Wilde's life story is a tragic story of early success that was eventually eclipsed by struggles. Jack Wilde achieved fame at a very young age. He was just 16 when he starred as the Artful Dodger in the 1968 musical titled Oliver. His portrayal of the cheeky street urchin made him a beloved figure in the entertainment scene. By also earning a nomination for an Academy Award and a Golden Globe, he was quickly thrust into the spotlight. Wilde's sudden stardom brought immense pressure. He was barely in his teens when he became famous, and like many child actors, he struggled to navigate the expectations placed upon him. Another side to the newfound fame was that it opened him up to an adult world he wasn't prepared for. As a teenager, Wilde became caught up in the temptations of the entertainment world. By his early 20s, he was already an alcoholic. Unfortunately, this derailed his promising career. His drinking began to affect his work, and he found it increasingly difficult to secure roles. In addition to his addiction, Wilde's health took a serious turn for the worse. He was diagnosed with oral cancer in the year 2000. Perhaps it was just tough luck, but some would say that it was a direct result of his heavy smoking and drinking. The cancer required extensive surgeries, including the removal of his tongue and voice box. Sadly, it left him unable to speak properly for the rest of his life. Number 13. Matthew Garber. Garber was a British child actor best known for his role as Michael Banks in the 1964 Disney film Mary Poppins. Though his acting career was brief, his performance in this iconic movie was enough to leave a lasting impression on audiences. That wasn't his first movie, though. Matthew Garber began his acting career in 1963 with the Disney film The 3 Lives of Thomasina, where he played the character Gordy McNabb, so this was the beginning of his association with Disney. By the following year, he landed a role in Mary Poppins in 1964. His role as Michael Banks, one of the 2 children cared for by Mary Poppins, the magical nanny, gained him widespread recognition. His performance in this film remains his most notable work, and it solidified his place in cinematic history. Technically, that was not his last role. After Mary Poppins, Garber appeared in one more Disney film titled The Gnome Mobile in 1967. In this film, he once again shared the screen with his Mary Poppins co-star Karen Dotrice. Sadly, this was his last film. After The Gnome Mobile, Matthew Garber stepped away from acting. He decided to go to school and lead a relatively private life. Even more sad, Matthew Garber's life was tragically cut short. By 1976, at the age of 21, he contracted hepatitis while traveling in India. Though the exact circumstances have been unclear, it is believed that the hepatitis was either caused by consuming contaminated food or water. Unfortunately, the illness progressed to pancreatitis. Garber was flown back to London, but he passed away on June 13, 1977. As you can imagine, his untimely death shocked the fans who loved him just as much as it did for those who knew him. Following his death, Garber's brother Fergus went on to speak about him. He described him as adventurous and as someone who loved traveling. Sadly, it ultimately led to his illness. Despite his short life and brief career, Garber is remembered fondly by fans of Mary Poppins and by those who grew up watching his films. In recognition of his contributions to film, Matthew Garber was posthumously named a Disney legend in 2004, alongside his Mary Poppins co-star Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. Next, a story that serves as a cautionary tale about the perils faced by child stars in Hollywood. As you are about to see, the industry has a tendency to exploit and discard young talent once they outlive their perceived commercial usefulness. Number 12, Jackie Kugan. Jackie Kugan was the original child star. At just 18 months old, he made his uncredited debut in the 1916 film Skinner's Baby. By the age of 3, he was already performing at the Orpheum Theater. While it was nothing significant, it gave Kugan his big break. During one of his performances, he was discovered by Charlie Chaplin. He was given a small role in the film A Day's Pleasure, but it was a subsequent role that made him a worldwide sensation. This was the role in Charlie Chaplin's 1921 film The Kid. Remember, Kugan was just 7 years old, but his presence in the film is arguably the reason why it is widely regarded as Chaplin's most personal and emotionally resonant work. We mean, his ability to effortlessly imitate Chaplin proved that he was born to play the role. Some would argue that Kugan nearly outshone Chaplin with his perfect timing, expressive eyes, and a mix of streetwise attitude and natural charm. Kugan became a household name. His name and image were everywhere, from dolls to stationery, even peanut butter. The cute Kugan face was right there. Notably, the film was a worldwide success, but this early triumph was almost marred by Kugan's parents' complaints that they had received none of the box office earnings. Sadly, this was the earliest sign of troubles to come. Reports indicate that Chaplin didn't think highly of Mrs. Kugan. While he found her a little too outspoken and pushy, he reportedly offered Jackie's father a high-paying job at the First National Studio. Fresh off the success of The Kid, Jackie quickly starred in several more films, including Peck's Bad Boy, Oliver Twist, Little Robinson Crusoe, and The Ragman, solidifying his rising fame. At this time, other child stars began to pop up, but despite their presence, Jackie captivated magazines and audiences alike. The studios loved him for it as they promoted him through countless interviews and photo shoots. Now, despite his young age, Jackie was earning millions. When counting Hollywood's highest-paid actors, Kugan was going to be up there. Let's consider his MGM deal. In 1923, his parents struck a notable deal with MGM Studios. This lucrative contract included a profit share in all of Jackie's films, as well as a substantial signing bonus and a $22,000 a week salary. If you do the math, $22,000 in 1923 is equivalent to around $400,000 today. At that time, Kugan must have hoped he was set for life. You know, early retirement and never having to deal with the pressures of fame anymore. Sadly, those hopes were cut short. In 1938, Kugan asked his mother, who had remarried his former business manager Arthur Bernstein, for his share of his movie earnings. His mother refused. According to Life magazine, she said, "No promises were ever made to give Jackie anything. Every dollar a kid earns before he is 21 belongs to his parents." Naturally, a heartbroken Kugan sued her and his stepfather, stating he had only received $6 a week until he turned 21, at which point he was given an additional $1,000. He was awarded a little over $100,000 of the $250,000 that was left after his parents had squandered the rest of his fortune. However, while the case did not yield significant financial results for Jackie, it drew attention to the exploitation of child stars and led to the creation of the Child Actors Bill, or Kugan Law, to safeguard their earnings and assets. All of those hard years of work and gruesome schedules meant almost nothing at the end of the day. The system used him while they could, and nobody, not even his parents, stopped to take care of his interests. Number 11, Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple's career took off at the age of 3, with her breakthrough coming in the 1934 film Bright Eyes. As she captivated audiences with her charm and talent, she quickly became a symbol of hope and happiness during the Great Depression. But it came at a great cost. While Shirley Temple was the child star who entertained everyone, she had her fair share of the dark side of Hollywood. To begin with, she endured grueling work hours and demanding schedules that were often unsuitable for a child. The pressure to maintain her public persona was intense. Too much for any child to handle, really. And when she could not keep it up, the studio had an evil strategy that kept kids in line. Ever heard of the phenomenon of the Hollywood black box? If you don't, count yourself as one of the lucky ones. Working overtime certainly had detrimental effects on the physical and mental well-being of child stars. But since the higher-ups did not care, that is where the black box comes in. It has been reported that some directors had a 6-foot, soundproof black box that contained a block of ice. When kept inside, the child would have to stand alone in the cold, humid air, or even worse, sit on the block of ice until they got tired of standing. Imagine using this as a means to threaten and eventually punish child actors who were, let's just say, uncooperative. Being a child star is stressful enough, but having to face such treatment because you were physically tired of working was beyond cruel. Don't even get us started on the pressures that came with the fame. Temple's life was under constant public scrutiny. This did not just affect her personal development, it also caused psychological stress. Sadly, that wasn't the only harsh reality she endured. Wondering what could be worse? Well, as she grew older, she fell victim to the most inappropriate behavior, and these instances notably came from much older industry professionals. As tragic as this sounds, it exposed her to the harsh realities of Hollywood at a very young age. In her autobiography, she recounted one particular event that took place sometime in 1940. During a meeting, an unnamed MGM producer had exposed himself to her. She was only 12 years old. He was certainly not the only one, and it only got worse as she entered her teenage years. But that is only half of it. Ever stopped to ponder on the psychological impact this had on the kids? Shirley Temple, for one, reportedly spoke on the loss of her childhood. From the endless hours on the set to constant rehearsals, you can see how the intense focus on her career must have led to the loss of a normal childhood. It is also possible that her early exposure to adult responsibilities and public scrutiny impacted her personal development and well-being. Number 10. Anissa Jones. Best known for her role as Buffy Davis on the hit television show Family Affair, Anissa Jones was your typical American child actress who showed promise of even bigger things. Anissa Jones was born on March 11, 1958 in West Lafayette, Indiana. Her family moved to California when she was a young child, and this was where her acting career began. At the age of 6, Jones auditioned for and won the role of Buffy Davis on Family Affair, a CBS sitcom that premiered in 1966. The show is centered around a wealthy bachelor who suddenly finds himself the guardian of his brother's orphan child, Buffy, her twin brother Jody, and their older sister Sissy. Jones quickly became a household name thanks to her portrayal of Buffy. It also helped that the show was a major success, and Jones's performance was widely praised. Buffy Davis became a cultural icon of the 1960s, often appearing on lunchboxes, dolls, and other merchandise. Despite the fame and success that Family Affair brought her, Jones's acting career did not extend far beyond the show. When Family Affair was canceled in 1971 after 5 seasons, Jones was 13 years old and found herself struggling to transition out of the child star role. She had become so closely associated with Buffy that finding new roles proved difficult. Additionally, her family life was troubled. Her parents had a contentious divorce, and her mother, who had managed her career, was reportedly strict and controlling. After the end of Family Affair, Jones attempted to return to normal life. She enrolled in high school and largely stepped away from acting. Unfortunately, this was around the time she became involved with a group of older friends who introduced her to drugs and alcohol. By the time she turned 18, she had received a substantial sum of money from her earnings on Family Affair. But this sudden financial independence only worsened her problems. Months later, on August 28, 1976, Anissa Jones died of a drug overdose in Oceanside, California. She was just 18, but she had a combination of drugs in her system, including cocaine, PCP, Quaaludes, and Seconal. Her death was ruled accidental, and the coroner particularly declared it the worst case of drug overdose he had ever seen.
We can do that right now.
Do what?
We'll play Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet. You know, we were about the ages that Shakespeare had in mind when he wrote it, so it'd be perfect.
Number 9. Leif Garrett. In 1978, Leif Garrett was something of a teen idol who achieved success both as an actor and a musician. Born on November 8, 1961 in Hollywood, California, Leif Garrett was immersed in the entertainment industry from an early age. He made his acting debut in the 1969 blockbuster film Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. He was uncredited in that film, but he subsequently appeared as a guest star in various TV shows such as Nanny and the Professor, Family Affair, Cannon, Gunsmoke, and The Odd Couple. His exposure increased with roles in films like Walking Tall and People Toys, a 1974 film he acted alongside his sister Dawn Lynn. By 1975, Garrett gained more recognition for his role as Eddie Karras in the TV series Three for the Road. Despite the show's brief run, he still garnered attention from teen magazines and fan mail. In addition to acting, Garrett ventured into music. He signed a recording contract with Atlantic Records. Then he released the self-titled debut album, which featured covered singles like Surfin' USA and Run Around Sue. Although he released 3 more albums, his music career eventually slowed in the early 1980s. Turning to acting again, he would not find much success either. Despite a memorable supporting role in the 1983 film The Outsiders, Garrett's subsequent films were less successful. In the late 1990s, he returned to music again, this time playing in a band named Godspeed and performing his original music. However, like many teen sensations, his popularity waned, most likely because he transitioned into adulthood. Struggling to find consistent work and compounded by substance abuse issues, Garrett filed for bankruptcy in October 2001. According to court documents, Garrett endured very dire financial problems as he had only $350 to his name and was surviving on a meager monthly allowance from his mother.
Them fighting word, partner. Look how I from...
Number 8. Carl Switzer. Carl Alfalfa Switzer was an American actor best known for his role as Alfalfa in the comedy short titled Our Gang. His distinctive appearance and comedic antics made him one of the most recognizable child stars of his time. Sadly, his acting career waned over time and his life took a tragic turn. But before any of that, Carl Switzer began his acting career in 1935 at the age of 7. He was cast as Alfalfa in the Our Gang series of short films produced by Hal Roach Studios. His character, Alfalfa, became a fan favorite due to his unique cowlick hairstyle, off-key singing, and comedic misadventures. We can't forget all the schemes revolving around his crush on Darla and rivalry with other boys in the gang. One could definitely say that Switzer's portrayal of Alfalfa was central to the success of Our Gang. Unfortunately, he was so good at being Alfalfa that it led to his typecasting and eventual decline. Isn't it ironic? Sure, Switzer gained fame as Alfalfa, but his association with the character made it difficult for him to transition to more serious acting roles as he got older. After leaving Our Gang in 1940, he struggled to find significant acting opportunities. Switzer appeared in a handful of films in minor or uncredited roles, such as It's a Wonderful Life in 1946, and even a smaller role in the 1953 John Wayne film Island in the Sky. As his acting career waned, Switzer pursued various menial jobs, including working as a dog breeder, hunting guide, and a bartender. Despite his early fame, his adult life was marked by financial difficulties and personal struggles. Carl Switzer's life came to a tragic and violent end on January 21, 1959, when he was shot and killed at the age of 31. The incident occurred during a confrontation over money. Switzer allegedly borrowed $50 from a man named Moses Bud Stilts, and during an argument at Stilts' home over repayment, the situation escalated. According to reports, Switzer threatened Stilts with a knife, leading Stilts to shoot him in self-defense. Switzer was pronounced dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. The circumstances surrounding Switzer's death were controversial. The case was initially ruled as justifiable homicide, but over the years, some have questioned whether the shooting was truly in self-defense or if there was more to the story. However, no further legal action was taken. Number 7. Erin Moran. Erin Moran was renowned for her contagious smile and animal-loving heart. Sadly, her later years were anything but rosy. The actress was born on October 18, 1960 in Burbank, California. She was the youngest child of Sharon and Edward Moran, who had 5 other children. By the time she graduated from North Hollywood High School, Moran would set her sights on the entertainment industry. Her acting career began with a TV commercial, but she really gained prominence as Joni Cunningham, Richie Cunningham's sister on ABC's Happy Days in 1974. However, prior to this role, she was a regular on the series Daktari and made guest appearances on various TV shows, including My Three Sons in 1960, Family Affair in 1966, The Waltons in 1972, and a couple more. In addition to her television work, Moran also appeared in feature films alongside notable stars such as Debbie Reynolds in How Sweet It Is in 1968. Godfrey Cambridge in Watermelon Men in 1970, and Wayne Newton in 80 Steps to Jonah in 1969. Following the end of Happy Days later in 1984, Moran struggled to find consistent roles as an adult. She made sporadic guest appearances on scripted and reality shows, but she would eventually leave Hollywood after facing foreclosure on her home. Tragically, Moran passed away on April 22, 2017 in Corydon, Indiana, at the age of 56. She was found deceased in the trailer she shared with her husband and mother-in-law. Reports suggest that Moran's final years were marked by financial hardship and homelessness. At some point, she had even been expelled from her mother-in-law's trailer park residence. Apparently, she became accustomed to late-night escapades and returning home with the most disruptive behaviors in tow. From appearing haggard whenever she was publicly spotted and recognized to always having a cigarette in hand, Moran may have just had the saddest couple of years up until her death. Friend and co-actor Paul Peterson admitted that he and a couple others tried to lend a helping hand at different points, but for some reasons their efforts were never enough. In her own words, it was a very dark room. Some don't find the light switch in time.
Where is that villain, Captain Hook? I'll slice him up and throw him to that crocodile.
I guess Bobby Driscoll.
Number 6. Bobby Driscoll. Bobby Driscoll's life story highlights the industry's propensity to exploit and discard young talent once they've outlived their perceived commercial usefulness. Bobby Driscoll became one of Disney's most prominent child stars in the 1940s and early 1950s. His performances in films like Song of the South, So Dear to My Heart, and Treasure Island earned him significant acclaim, one of which included the prestigious Juvenile Academy Award. Interestingly, Bobby Driscoll was discovered at the age of 5 when a barber introduced him to his neighbor, who happened to be a casting director. His natural acting ability quickly set him apart. He had expressive eyes and an endearing smile. He truly was a delight to watch. Driscoll was adored by audiences for his wholesome, relatable, and heartwarming performances, and his ability to convey a wide range of emotions endeared him to both children and adults. His roles often depicted him as a brave, earnest, and kind-hearted boy, which resonated deeply with the post-World War II audience that sought optimistic and inspiring stories. Let's not also forget that Driscoll was the ultimate Disney icon. As one of Disney's first contract players, Driscoll became synonymous with the brand's image of innocence and adventure. His association with Disney's golden age of animation and live-action films no doubt added to his appeal. By 1953, he voiced the title character in Disney's animated classic Peter Pan. This further cemented his place in the hearts of many. Sadly, this success came at the cost of a normal childhood. Driscoll faced intense work schedules that left little time for a normal childhood. The demands of continuous filming and promotional activities were exhaustive, impacting his education and social development. But the worst was yet to come. As Driscoll grew older, he faced the common issue of typecasting. Hollywood struggled to transition him from a child star to an adolescent or adult actor. The onset of puberty brought physical changes, including severe acne and a change in the tone of his voice. This greatly affected his screen image and led to his contract termination with Disney. Hollywood's reluctance to see him in mature roles limited his opportunities. The industry's preference for a particular look and type for child actors meant that as he aged, he no longer fit the roles that had made him famous. The abrupt end of his Disney contract in 1953 was a significant blow. This abandonment left Driscoll without the support and guidance he needed during a crucial period of his career and personal development. Later on, Driscoll's life was marred by legal troubles, including arrests related to his drug use. Financial difficulties compounded his struggles, and he became increasingly marginalized by the industry that once celebrated him. Naturally, the abrupt end to his career contributed to his descent into substance abuse. To make this worse, he faced significant social alienation. This dramatic shift from being a beloved child star to being virtually unemployable was devastating. His attempts to revive his career were largely unsuccessful. As you can imagine, this only led to further isolation and despair. So much despair that his life ended tragically. In 1968, he was found dead in an abandoned New York City tenement at the age of 31. His death was attributed to heart failure caused by his drug use. It was evident that he had been living in squalor. It was so bad that his body went unidentified for some time. Driscoll's tragic early death in 1968, largely forgotten and destitute, highlighted the stark contrast between his early success and later life.
Hurry up!
Number 5. Dana Hill. This American actress was best known for her roles in both live-action films, television, as well as voice acting in animated series. Sadly, she faced significant health challenges throughout her life. She was quite the all-rounder, though, and she managed to make a lasting impact in Hollywood before her untimely death. Born Dana Lynn Goetz on May 6, 1964, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a young age. It stunted her growth and also limited her physical development. As a result of this, she had to portray characters much younger than her actual age. Despite her health issues, Hill was determined to pursue acting, and her youthful appearance helped her land roles that would otherwise have gone to younger performers. Hill began her acting career in television during the late 1970s and 80s. One of her most notable early roles was the critically acclaimed television movie The Two of Us in 1981. That same year, she appeared in the ABC after-school special titled The Body Human: Facts for Girls, where she played a young girl learning about her diabetes. Hill's film breakthrough came in 1983 when she starred in Shoot the Moon alongside Diane Keaton and Albert Finney. These were all outstanding roles, but she is perhaps best remembered for her role as Audrey Griswold in the 1985 comedy film National Lampoon's European Vacation. In addition to her on-screen roles, Hill found significant success as a voice actress. Her youthful-sounding voice allowed her to portray young characters in animated series like Goof Troop, DuckTales, Chip 'n Dale, Rescue Rangers, as well as Darkwing Duck. Sadly, behind the scenes, there were health struggles that took a toll on her throughout her life. Her diabetic condition led to complications, including diabetic coma and kidney failure. Tragically, on July 15, 1996, at the age of 32, Deanna Hill passed away from complications related to her diabetes after suffering a massive stroke brought on by the disease. If you've made it this far, do hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from us. Number 4, Judy Garland. When talking about child stars whose time in Hollywood was marked by a series of inhumane treatments that left lasting impacts on their mental and physical health, Judy Garland is one name that simply cannot be left out. Born Judy Frances Gum on June 10, 1922, Judy Garland was an amazing singer and iconic actor. Now, people did not know it then, but behind the glitz and glamour of her public persona, there was a much darker reality. The beginnings of her tragic story can be traced to the very start of her career. At just 13 years old, Judy's remarkable talent caught the attention of Louis B. Mayer, the co-founder of MGM Studios. Mayer recognized her potential and was determined to mold her into a star. And that was exactly what he did. But as she grew older, her body started to change. As you may know, the golden age of Hollywood was a time when perfection was the ultimate goal. The entire era was characterized by extreme practices and stringent beauty standards, so much so that fame automatically brought on the pressure to maintain a certain physique. Sadly, it was just a downward spiral from there. Since the film industry placed a high premium on physical appearance, old Hollywood was known for its endorsement of extreme dieting and fad diets. As such, actors and actresses often followed drastic regimes to achieve and maintain their weight and figure. Unfortunately, child stars like Judy Garland were not immune to this. Her weight suddenly became a concern for the studio. As you can imagine, this sparked rumors of drastic diet restrictions. And if these rumors were true, then it could be the reason why she was plunged into a life of depression and dependence on drugs. Now let's get down to what these vile rumors are. The rumors suggest that Judy faced relentless bullying from the studio. She would often be hit with derogatory remarks like "fat little pig with pigtails." Each derogatory remark is more humiliating and haunting than the last. The studio allegedly continued to subject her to a strict diet regimen that bordered on abuse. Allegedly, they would taunt her by serving food only to snatch it away before she could eat. At some point, she was even placed on strictly liquid diets. Her sustenance was said to be limited to chicken soup, black coffee, and appetite-suppressing pills administered every 4 hours. Shockingly, it is speculated that she was coerced into smoking up to 80 cigarettes daily just to aid in weight loss. Regrettably, these challenges exacted a heavy toll on her. It led her down a path of dependence on medication and drugs to the extent that by the age of 37, she was deemed a permanent semi-invalid.
Daddy likes to tell stories. Mommy says he tells stories all the time.
Number 3, Judith Barcy. Judith Eva Barcy was born on June 6, 1978 in Los Angeles, California, to Hungarian immigrant parents Josef and Maria Barcy. Her mother, Maria, had dreams of becoming an actress, but instead channeled her ambitions into her daughter. Judith showed early signs of talent, and by the age of 5, she had already begun her career in show business. Judith's big break came when she was cast in commercials, quickly becoming a sought-after child actress. Her small stature allowed her to play roles much younger than her actual age, which added to her appeal in Hollywood. Judith soon transitioned from commercials to television and film roles. Some of her most notable appearances included guest roles on popular TV shows like Cheers, The Twilight Zone, and Growing Pains. Sadly, Judith's personal life was marred by tragedy. Her father, Judith Barcy, was an abusive and controlling figure. As Judith's career flourished, Joseph became increasingly jealous and paranoid. He struggled with alcoholism and constantly made threats against the family. His abusive behavior escalated over time, and when Maria attempted to seek help, even reporting Joseph's threats to authorities, her pleas for assistance were not taken seriously. On July 25, 1988, the unthinkable happened. Joseph Barcy killed both Judith and Maria in their home before setting the house on fire and taking his own life. Judith was only 10 years old.
I think our time has come.
What do you mean?
All right, I'll tell you. We might as well face it. Our folks are up against it, and up against it good. I've been doing a little snooping around. You know what I found out?
What?
Number 2, Mickey Rooney. Surprised Mickey Rooney made this list? Well, as you are about to see, his career trajectory is yet another vivid illustration of Hollywood's tendency to exploit and then abandon its stars once they no longer fit the mold that brought them initial success. To break this one down, we will begin with his phenomenal rise to stardom. Mickey Rooney started performing at a very young age. He reportedly appeared in vaudeville before moving on to film. When he made the transition, though, he gained significant popularity with his portrayal of Mickey Maguire in a series of short films in the 1920s and early 1930s. However, one could argue that Rooney's breakout role came as Andy Hardy in the MGM film series, which began with the 1937 film A Family Affair. His character's wholesome and all-American appeal resonated with Depression-era audiences, making Rooney one of the top box office draws. Notably, Rooney was an on-screen heartthrob who was often paired with Judy Garland in films like Babes in Arms and Strike Up the Band. The first problem here is that he was deprived of typical childhood experiences. The relentless demands of their careers meant that his life was controlled by the studios, with little time for education, play, or normal social interactions. To cope with demanding schedules, he was given amphetamines to stay awake and barbiturates to help him sleep. This practice began when he was just a teenager, and it led to severe addiction issues. At some point, Rooney's career was interrupted by his service in World War II. By the time Rooney returned to post-war Hollywood, the industry had changed. Even Rooney himself had changed. The initial boyish charm was gone, and the much-needed transition from boyish roles to adult parts proved challenging. We mean his earlier typecasting made it difficult to find new, suitable roles. Naturally, Rooney's star power began to wane in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Audiences' tastes were shifting, and the wholesome image that made him famous no longer resonated as much. Try as he might, he struggled to find success in more mature roles. His attempts to reinvent himself in dramatic roles and independent films were met with limited success. To make his decline even more painful, Rooney would face significant financial troubles, including mismanagement of his earnings by his parents and subsequent legal battles. Despite his substantial earnings in his prime, he declared bankruptcy multiple times.
It's little Dick Doggin, please. Open your eyes. Look at me. Doctor, what's the matter? What's the matter with him?
Number 1, Jackie Cooper. Different generations remember Jackie Cooper for different phases of his career. To the first, he was the beloved star of Our Gang, The Bowery, Treasure Island, and a couple of other classic films. To the next, he was the clean-cut leading man of the 1950s and 60s TV series The People's Choice and Hennessy. And to the third, he was an outstanding Emmy-winning TV director of projects like Izzy and Mo. Better yet, he is often remembered as a supporting actor, perfectly portraying roles like newspaper editor Perry White in 3 Superman movies. No matter the phase you know him for, one thing cannot be taken away from Jackie Cooper. He remains one of the most successful child stars from the Golden Age. By age 9 in 1931, he was earning $1,300 a week. That was big money back in the day. Sadly, there is a dark story behind this success, a dark story that seemingly led to his eventual decline. To fully grasp this, let us turn to his autobiography. If this is any indicator, then surely he was a troubled youth. Even before venturing into Hollywood, his first heartbreak would come from his own father. As the story goes, when he was only 2 years old, Jackie's father stepped out to buy cigarettes and never returned home to his family. Imagine having adult relations with an unnamed 20-year-old neighbor when he was just 13. By 17, he was reportedly the young lover of Joan Crawford. If he had kept this up, it would have been quite understandable that he had already been divorced twice by the age of 31. All this could be traced to his traumatic and bitter childhood, and a huge chunk of that trauma comes from his time in Hollywood. As a child star, Cooper faced rigorous filming schedules and intense pressure to perform. At this point, you must know that this was typical for child actors in the golden age of Hollywood. But Cooper would face far worse, an emotional manipulation that was out of this world. To elicit genuine emotional reactions on screen, directors often employed harsh tactics. One notable instance occurred during the filming of the 1931 film Skippy. This particular scene demanded extreme emotions and tears from Cooper. Yes, he was quite talented for his age, but for some reason the tears would not come. As the story goes, director Norman Taurog, who was also Cooper's stepfather, threatened to kill Cooper's dog to make him cry for a scene. When that did not work, the dog was taken outside. By the time Cooper heard the gunshot, the tears flowed down his cheeks naturally. He channeled this pain into the scene, and the directors had their perfect moment caught on camera. But it was all a lie. The dog was well and kicking. Cooper would soon realize that he had signed up for more than he could handle. When his dog was returned to him unharmed, he was so hysterical that it took a doctor to administer a sedative to him later in the day. Do you think he had anyone to run to at that point? His stepfather was the director, and some accounts even confirm that his grandmother was the brain behind the particular incident. To give you an idea of how traumatizing and how long the effects lingered, one biography of Jackie Cooper is titled, "Please Don't Shoot My Dog." Sadly, there was more where that came from. The Skippy movie was so successful that the studio was convinced that it was the tears that endeared the audience most. Tears or not, it was so successful that it was even nominated for an Academy Award as Best Picture. Interestingly, it immediately spawned a sequel titled Suki, and when we say immediately, we are talking about a sequel that was released within the same year. From that point, Cooper was mostly hired for roles where crying was inevitable. Between 1931 to 1937, Cooper starred in 21 films. He wasn't just a character, he was the main piece and center attraction of those movies. As you can imagine, the dog trick wasn't going to keep working, so they came up with more creative ways to get him to tears. Sometimes they would threaten to give his position to a younger boy who deserved it more, and other times they would tell him how disappointing he was to his family and his fans. He was reportedly working 11-hour days, which meant he had very little time for school. It was so bad that he could barely write or read at the age of 10. So which of these child stars had it worse? Do share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. You also can't miss the next video on your screen.